Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel and editorial discussion for 11th of April 2022. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we shall discuss an important editorial from today's The Hindu. The editorial's title is India's Role in a Disordered World. Let's start this discussion. The editorial begins by saying that the world is in a state of disorder, be it climate crisis or the issue of terrorism, the trade wars between the developed countries, and the mismanagement of COVID and vaccinations. All this is something that the developed world has caused largely. Look at the climate crisis, the greenhouse gases. Who is to be held accountable and responsible? The developed countries started this process of industrialization. Terrorism, the financing of terrorism, and the weapons being used. Where do these weapons get created? The developed countries. Trade wars ensued before the COVID times, right? And it was between USA, China, USA, India, weaponization of trade by a country like China. All this has made the world more disordered than before. USA becoming a party to Ukraine and Russia war and fueling this war. Completely avoidable situation was this war itself, and the countries are even fueling this war. This has caused inflation in food, inflation in fuel. A lot of important entities which were getting exported from these countries, it has halted and stalled. The idea of democracy is only dependent on the interest, the personal interest, and the internal interest of the countries. These are the same developed countries which speak of human rights but have bombed a country like Japan with nuclear bombs. They did carpet bombing. That means they bombed the all the surfaces, not even left the edge of the carpet. Bombed carpet bombing in European nations during the Second World War. Imagine these are the developed countries which we hold as the one which are spearheading technological and democratic revolutions. But the situation is absolutely opposite of this. The editorial goes on to say that the institutional architecture that has been created around the world that also serves the developed countries. Look at institutions like World Bank, IMF. They have got quota rights, voting rights, all in proportion to the fundings and the equity held by nations. And who holds these equities? Largely developed countries. The trade negotiations in WTO, they happen from developed countries towards developing countries largely, right? And all the developing countries have to and sometimes mandatorily follow a lot of rules and regulations. Even if United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution for the development of the whole world, for example, issues of agriculture, issues of food security, even then United Nations Security Council can over its own will veto such resolutions. All the armed interventions around the whole world which are being done completely unilateral. USA attacking Afghanistan, USA attacking Iraq. Look at the example of Russia attacking Crimea, or Russia imposing a war in Chechnya region, or Georgia. All of them unilateral. G7 institution got formed in the year 1976, right? This was in the context of 1973 oil embargo by Gulf nations. Why? Because there was an Israel and Gulf War, in which the Gulf War, post this war, they said that they will not be supplying petroleum reserves to the developed countries, and there was a lot of economic concern. There were issues because everything runs on fuel, and they formed G7 association. This is an important association. You must know the members: USA, UK, Italy, France, Germany, Canada, and Japan, right? So there is no China and there is no Russia. G7 countries, Western world nations. And later, 1999, Russia also joined this association, causing it to become G8. All right. So Western world being represented here. So they represented their own economic interest. And later, when they realized that other countries, Asian countries and other developing countries are also having greater stake in economic cooperation around the whole world, they formulated something called as G20. G20 in 1999 for international financial stability. You must know the members of this organization because one, India is one of the members. Second, India is also going to be the chair of this organization in the year 2022 from December to for 1 year term, right? So you must know what is the main thing that India can actually do in this organization, how India can steer the whole world from this position of crisis to a position of more stability. See, there was an idea amongst developed countries that they start funding the developing world with the help of Washington consensus. It was formulated in the early 90s. And if they finance the developing countries, they will start to grow slowly and steadily. But what it led to was further disparity in income, further, further putting people in the developing countries in more poverty. This is what it led to. So all these institutions, G7, G8, G20, serving the purpose of developed countries only. You must remember the members of the G20. Apart from 19 nations, one member is the European Union. So 19 plus European Union, these are the 20 members, and this is a very influential group, right? The influence of this group is such that it has 90% of the total production of the whole world, 80% of international trade, and two-thirds of world population. Imagine, China is also a member, India is a member, Saudi is a member, so Turkey is a member. So this is how you must note down all the 19 members plus one European nations. This is an important forum because India is going to lead this organization for 1 year, and I must share with you people how the countries participate as the chair. See, the chair of this membership of G20 is rotating between the members. So here we have 20 countries, 19 countries plus European Union. The 19 countries have been divided in five groups. And if you see very carefully, the group 3, group 4 and group 5 represent regions. This is East Asia region, group 5. Group 4 is of that of the European countries. Group 3 presenting the American nations, right? Mexico, Latin America, Brazil and Argentina. Group 2 and group 1 is little heterogeneous in nature. However, the selection of the chair is happening in such a way that once a member from group 1 is selected as the chair, and then group 2, and then group 3, group 4, group 5, and this is how it rotates. And amongst the group who is to become the chair, there's a consensus and they decide who is to become the chair. So group 3 contains 3 countries only, and this is how the membership rotates. India is going to be the member in 2022 December. Now the point is that since this is a rotating membership, so there has to be a continuity maintained, and that is why there is something called as troika. This association has the present country which is the chair of G20, the future chair and the past chair. The past chair helps the present chair to administer, and the present chair and the past chair hints are given to the future chair, so that there is a very smooth transition of administration. So you must know this also, because India is going to be a leader here, and India will be able to steer the economy, the economy of SAARC nations, BIMSTEC, and all the crises that I mentioned right now here. India will be able to steer these crises, and away from these crises, India will have a major say as it is leader. So this is why I shared this part. Moving ahead, the editorial says that there is a rising inequality. Even when they have spent a lot in the developing countries, there is inter-regional equality and intra-country inequality. Even a country like USA is going through inflation. The prices of real estate in USA are very high. Not only that, even the rent prices and education cost is very high in USA right now. And this is not proportional to the earnings of the people. The earnings are not rising in proportion to the rise in education, rise in infrastructure, real estate, etc. And there is a fighting ensuing for the vulnerable sections. See, the fighting for vulnerable section was is not a recent phenomena. Vulnerable sections like women, like marginalized sections, the rights of Afro-Americans, these all people have been fighting for decades and decades. The editorial itself says universal adult franchise wherein all humans have equal voting powers, whether they are billionaires or paupers, is a more recent development in the West. See, adult equality is only a recent phenomena. So what is required is compassionate capitalism in the Western world. Compassionate capitalism, where the capitalism not only serves its own purposes but gives something back to society and people as well. Now, this is not only happening in the Western world, this is happening in India as well. This is happening between West and India, both of them as well, right? So this is where inequality must be curbed. Moving ahead, the editorial says that countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Russia, even Chile, all of these were reflecting the liberal capitalism model earlier, not these times. They all were, in some way or the other, pawns, small players of the Western nations and representing liberal capitalism. Only until a time when the complete social fabric of these nations broke, because some people were very rich, very influential, and a lot of masses, they were deprived of resources. So there has been revolution, internal revolution in these countries. The editorial talks of a very important concept called as cumulative causation. That means that when uh, there are powerful people, they will eventually serve the purpose of keeping themselves in the power, right? And it might seem that they may be operating for other people, but they are actually operating to keep their influence around the whole world. Redistribution of power therefore is very, very important, right? Those who have power will resist losing that power, and this is what is called as cumulative causation. Those who are already having more power from greater wealth or more education will use power not only to improve the rules of the game, right? It might show as if they are improving the world around, but to ensure that they remain in power. This is what the developed world is doing to the developing countries. And how should we be able to counter this? India's role as a leader of G20. So very important editorial here talking about India's leadership and the problems that the world is facing, how India can help in overcoming them. To prevent violence, social violence, it is important that the countries become genuinely democratic, right? Not only to show hathi ke daant khane ke alag dikhane ke alag. It shouldn't be such. They should be genuinely democratic. Not only that, they must work towards equitable distribution of resources, wealth. The countries should not be attacking each other, right? Unlike what is happening right now, developed countries giving fuel to Ukraine to be able to defend itself against Russia. They should be ensuring that the war itself completely stops, right? So they must be given freedom to adopt versions of democracy and economy, right? And there should be more compassionate liberalism, compassionate capitalism. India here should be able to withstand the undemocratic global dictators. Who is it indicating at? USA. Undemocratic global dictators who are saying India should not participate with Russia in the purchasing fuel. India cannot bypass the sanctions given to Russia. So this is how India should be able to withstand the pressure and create a leadership of difference for the whole world. So what did we understand in this editorial are some key concepts of how world is behaving right now, how India can impact this, and certain important terms like genuine democracy, like cumulative causation, like compassionate capitalism. Please remember these keywords, note it down, and the way in which G20 nations select who is to be the chair of G20. So this is what we studied through this editorial of The Hindu. And if you like this initiative, share some love through likes, comments, and shares. And I have a question for you. This question states, mention 5 principles with which India could engage with the present state of disorderly world. Give examples of such engagement. All you got to do is think of 30 seconds of what are the principles. For example, democracy is a principle, equitable distribution of resources is a principle, and give an example of how India is doing this. Simple example is distribution of COVID vaccines through Metri. Just type it down in the comment section, and this will be a great practice for your brain. Now, if you like this initiative, share some love through likes, comments, and shares. And if you have got questions, you're most welcome. If you've got some editorials where you have problems and you don't understand, just type down the issue. I will discuss them with you. Thank you for watching.